You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. What happens now? You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache. You'll get over heartache.
The outbreak of the coronavirus has been labeled a pandemic by the World Health Organization, WHO. Countries around the world are increasingly adopting sweeping measures to stem the spread of the new coronavirus, including shutting down airports, imposing travel restrictions, and completely sealing off their borders. But is it enough? Good evening, St. Lucia. Welcome to yet another episode of What's Happening Now with Laura, where we're making your stories our story. Tonight, Dr. Sharon Belmar George, Chief Medical Officer, will be my special guest. And this show is a very special show as well. And that is because, in the interest of observing social distancing, Dr. Belmar and I are in different locations. You know, this COVID-19 era is a very fluid one, a very dynamic one, and things change constantly, things evolve. And so Dr. Belmar is not actually going to be seen by us, but we will hear her. And the reason for this is, as you can expect, Dr. Belmar is very pressed for time these days, and she's stretched very thin. I don't recall in my memory, and I have a couple of decades on me, a chief medical officer who has been so pressed, who has been so demanded. I think the only person I can remember who had such a difficult time, or not difficult time, but challenging time, would be Dawn French. Remember Dawn French from Nemo, whenever there was a hurricane or some mauvais temps, as you would say in our local parlance, approaching, Dawn French would be very stretched and very pulled apart. And I don't recall, since she's left Nemo, another Nemo head who has been so involved and who has become a home name as Dawn French. And I think Dr. Sharon Belmar George has fit into that category of you know, a home name. Everybody knows that name, and everybody connects it with them, connects it with this COVID-19 and the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus. So the show that I had planned this evening is not what's going to take place, and so we're going to be moving on very, how should I say, we're playing by ear. We're definitely playing by ear this evening. And I laugh because, you know, at the end of the day, you have to flow. And I think my phrase for this coronavirus era is the tree that does not bend with the wind breaks. You know, it's an old saying from our parents and grandparents and great grandparents that the tree that does not bend with the wind breaks. And so we cannot afford to break. It's trying times, it's stressing times, it's different times, it's interesting times, but we have to move with the ebb and the flow and do what is necessary. As I said earlier at the top of the hour, Dr. Belmar and I would have been broadcasting from different locations, and that would have been in the interest of the social distancing that we are asked to practice. Those of you who have been following me on Facebook, and a lot of you, if you have not been following me on Facebook, would be very surprised, because those of you who know me very well would know that I do not do the Facebook thing. But I have been doing the Facebook. I call it my social experiment. And the reason I've been doing this is because, in preparation for just this moment, when I will no longer be able to go up to studio, or it's not convenient for me to go up to DBS studio, how can I do this? How can I continue it works in your living rooms, in your bedrooms, in your homes, in your favorite watering holes. How do I continue to do this, not compromising what we do? So it's been my lifelong dream, and I've said that before on a couple of shows that I've done on Facebook. And you can find me on Facebook. Just type in Laura Japierre on Facebook, and then I will also, before the evening is over, I will put in that link so that you can follow me on Facebook. I will be on Facebook doing a very, very similar show to this one tomorrow with Dr. Glenn Spurd, Joseph, and I think it's very important that we do this kind of show, and this show is specifically dedicated to to PPEs, those masks and those gloves that we use. Yes, certainly. So this is why we're doing the show, and the one that we're doing tomorrow, on Facebook. This is going to be the sum total of the shows, all about PPEs, the right way to use them and the wrong way to use them. So this is what I'll be doing. And as I said at the top of the show, we're in different locations. And right now I'm at home. I'm in my office, actually. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to have a home studio. Where if I'm not feeling too well, I'm not up to driving, if I'm running late, because you know how things are. You have a day job, you have a night job. If I'm running late and I can't make it to studio, how do I do this? And I've always been putting it off. When I got this gig on DBS, I said, yeah, that's the prime opportunity for me to do it. I still kept putting it off. But guess what? COVID-19 has a way of putting things into perspective for us. So not everything that is resulting because of COVID-19 is a bad thing. So for me, having this little home studio is a good thing. So I'm beaming to your homes, into your living rooms and bedrooms and everywhere else from my office studio, not quite a home studio, but an office studio. Pardon the quality of the broadcasting is not what you've come used to, but we're trying and we're going to make this work. It's the last thing that we do. So for some of us, some of the measures implemented by government has been described as draconian, inconsiderate, and uncompassionate. And I'm referring to the 24-hour lockdown, where persons were asked to stay indoors. Persons were asked to stay indoors, persons were asked not to go out. And the reason for this is because of containment. We want to be able to contain this virus. The country was put on somewhat of a scaled down version of a lockdown, and we had a curfew, and curfew at the time, the first time that it was implemented, it was from 11 o'clock to 5 a.m. That didn't work out well, and that was when we only had 3 cases of COVID-19. 3 cases, all 3 being imported cases. We had 3 cases, and we went on a scaled version of the lockdown. We didn't take that too well. We were given the opportunity to self-manage. We were given the opportunity to be disciplined. We were given the opportunity to do things our way without having a slave master or taskmaster at our backs. And we squandered that opportunity. Persons were absconding from quarantine. Persons were smuggling people in from Martinique through backdoor channels. Oh, it was terrible. Then we moved from 3 cases to 5 cases. And from 5 cases to 14 cases, well, to 13 cases. And so then the government decided lockdown, 24 hours. We were supposed to be in lockdown for 2 weeks. My goodness. No, I lied. It wasn't for 2 weeks. It was for 7 days. My goodness. We barely ate. We complained, we groused about it. We said the government was draconian. We said that the government was inconsiderate. We said that the government was uncompassionate. We said so many things about the government that the government ended up capitulating and breaking the 24-hour curfew and allowing us one day, that was on Thursday, to go out and to get goods. Claimed that the shutdown was too immediate. I don't understand. We say that this is a war. We say that we are at war, and yet we complain when we behave like we are at war. And we are at war. The only difference between this and any other war is that our enemy is unseen. Our enemy is as deadly as any other. Our enemy takes no prisoners. Takes no prisoners. Like I said, the only difference is that this enemy which we're facing is unseen. Microscopic, unseen, but very deadly. Extremely deadly. So, as I said, we were given the opportunity to self-manage. We were given the opportunity to prove how disciplined that we could be, and we didn't prove that. So we went under lockdown. We reopened for one day, on Thursday, and we said, let's test this thing out, and then by Monday, we would have another reopening, which was yesterday, we would have had another reopening, and we would have lifted the 24-hour curfew on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. However, we opened on the Thursday to the public, to consumers. They came in, they did the purchases. Are we an indisciplined bunch of people? The more we spoke about social distancing, I don't think we got it. And so we went back indoors 24 hours, except for those persons who own stores, mini-marts, and community stores, and we were given the opportunity to restock. Let me tell you something. My family owns a community store, and let me tell you, even on Friday, people were trying to get us to sell, and we were like, the store was open yesterday. The next available day is Monday. Please adhere to the rules and regulations of protocols established for our safety, for the safety of our parents, our elderly, our most vulnerable. Please adhere. People were not having any of it. Long and short of it is, government, the same unfeeling government, which I thought they had done a good thing. I felt that the lockdown was necessary. I felt that we were doing the right thing. We were on course. We were doing the right thing because at the end of the day, if you count here, there's something my father used to say to me as a child: if you count here, you would feel. And this is exactly what we were behaving like. We were behaving like kids who couldn't understand. And so if we couldn't hear, we would feel. And so when we felt it, we squealed like pigs to the slaughter at Christmas time. Anyway, government revisited their policy and decided that they were going to lift the 24-hour curfew. Mind you, we had not survived. We did not survive 7 days. We didn't go through 7 days of 24-hour lockdown. We could not even last one day, because within the first day, persons were being hauled down to the various stations, stores were being shut down because they were being opened, people were just misbehaving and breaking the law with impunity. Mind you, we undergo something of a martial law, so to speak, because the government, the Prime Minister, has authority, extraordinary authority, because we're in a state of emergency right now, to shut us down and to implement measures which he deems worthy for our own safety, because we aren't able to handle that. Anyway, government revisited that, and here we are. Curfew has now been revisited, and curfew now is from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. And in between that time, from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., stores are opened, and consumers, citizens, can go to the stores, various stores, and they can purchase. But why all of this? It's because the experts tell us that containment is where it's at. So whilst we try to mitigate before, the went from 3 to 5 to 13 to 14. And though we had about 300 persons, a little over 300 persons in quarantine, and I think 2 sets of persons have gone home, we're still not out of the woods. People were still breaking the law with impunity. People were still flagrantly cavorting the streets, at the rivers, at the beaches, still selling alcohol, doing all of the things that we were told not to. So we went into containment mode. And what is containment? Before I continue to that, we will have a clip right now, and it will tell us what the difference is between containment and mitigation. And mind you, I did say that Dr. Belmar, before we do that, will be on, and we're going to bring her on a little bit later, maybe about 15 minutes, in about 10 minutes. We're going to have Dr. Belmar on. We're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back with Dr. Belmar, and she will talk to you about the substantive matter, which is the PPEs and the proper usage of. But before we do that, before we get Dr. Belmar on the phone, let us just watch this clip on containment.
One. If you have a runny nose and sputum, you have a common cold. 2. Coronavirus pneumonia is a dry cough with no runny nose. 3. This new virus is not heat resistant and will be killed by a temperature of just 26/27 of a degree. It hates the sun. 4. If someone sneezes with it, it takes about 10 feet before it drops to the ground and is no longer airborne. 5. If it drops on a metal surface, it will live for at least 12 hours, so if you come into contact with any metal surface, wash your hands as soon as you can with a bacterial soap. 6. On fabric, it can survive for 6 to 12 hours. Normal laundry detergent will kill it. 7. Drinking warm water is effective for all viruses. Try not to drink liquids with ice. 8. Wash your hands frequently, as the virus can only live on your hands for 5 to 10 minutes, but a lot can happen during that time. You can rub your eyes, pick your nose unwittingly, and so on. 9. You should also gargle as a prevention. A simple solution of salt in warm water will suffice. 10. Can't emphasize enough, drink plenty of water. Update 2. The symptoms. 1. It will first infect the throat, so you'll have a sore throat lasting 3/4 days. 2. The virus then blends into a nasal fluid that enters the trachea and then the lungs, causing pneumonia. This takes about 5-6 days further. 3. With the pneumonia comes high fever and difficulty in breathing. 4. The nasal congestion is not like the normal kind. You feel like you're drowning. It's imperative you then seek immediate attention. Update 3. The new coronavirus may not show sign of infection for many days. How can one know if she is infected? By the time they have fever and/or cough and go to the hospital, the lung is usually 50% fibrosis and it's too late. Experts provide a simple self-check that we can do every morning. Take a deep breath and hold your breath for more than 10 seconds. If you complete it successfully without coughing, without discomfort, stiffness or tightness, etc., it proves there is no fibrosis in the lungs, basically indicates no infection. In critical time, please self-check every morning in an environment with clean air. Everyone should ensure your mouth and throat are moist, never dry. Take a few sips of water every 15 minutes at least. Why? Even if the virus gets into your mouth, drinking water or other liquids will wash them down through your throat and into the stomach. Once there, your stomach acid will kill all the virus. If you don't drink enough water more regularly, the virus can enter your windpipe and into the lungs. That's very dangerous. So please do everything to ensure your safety during this pandemic.
What happens now? You'll get
COVID-19 respects no national borders, no social bounds, no political systems, and no cultural values. It hits us just as hard. It levels the world. Facing the pandemic, it is not what happened matters. It is how we respond. For almost a month, it infected thousands in Wuhan in a day, and every hospital bed was occupied. Now, empty beds and closed wards in the city. How did China make it? It is nothing new, but it's worthy to know. According to an initial WHO report, an infected person appears to spread it to an average of 2.6 people. And after 10 generations of transmission, with each taking 5 or 6 days, that one initial case has spawned 3,500 in matters of days. And that is what the world is seeing. What China did is to break the cycle by human intervention. The scale unprecedented in history. Extreme, draconian, and aggressive. These are the words used to describe China's response. But now, people have come to terms with the new norm. Lockdown. Some people say, isn't that a violation of individual rights? Actually, the balance between individual rights and public safety is always an ever-changing equation. After 9/11, all the airports in the world began to impose draconian safety checks on passengers, and people accepted it because we traded a little of our freedom for the greater good of the public. China imposed the largest and most draconian quarantine in history. Factories shut, public transport stopped, and people stayed indoors. By doing that, it flattened the curve. On one hand, China avoided many millions of cases and tens of thousands of deaths. On the other, it stretched out the time and made the hospitals restaffed and less strained. This is exactly what Europe and America should know. But public policy needs both ends to agree, the decision makers and the decision takers. Quarantine is indeed extreme and extremely restrictive. It needs the people in lockdown to be honest and cooperative. I think what the people of Wuhan did was exceptional. They had the courage, tenacity, and resilience to stay housebound for days, weeks, and months. Most view the quarantine as a civic duty, and that is why it worked. Public health methods are universal. They either work or they don't. We are all human beings. Our epidemiology is the same, but we have different economies, demographies, and sociologies. Facing a global pandemic, every nation needs a new contract signed between its politicians, businesses, and the public. Desperate times ask desperate measures. This is a desperate time, and we should not put politics ahead of public health, now more than ever. The new coronavirus has been claimed by ideologues. Donald Trump said it justified tighter border control. Bernie Sanders linked it to free health care. While in Singapore, every infection case is followed and dealt with. Bit by bit, every country is testing its methods through trial and error. Some paid a high price, and some set a high bar. We should all move ahead with humility. There is no decision without trade-offs, and most of all, there's nothing without skin in the game. And now, the whole world has learned, or is learning, to play.
Wow. And that's just what it is. This is what we've been talking about. This is what the government has been talking about. This is what Dr. Belmar George has been talking about. It's all about containment. Before we bring on Dr. George, I just want to share sobering statistics with you. Confirmed infections worldwide, 1,430,516. Out of that, 82,019 persons have perished. Today, 7,365 persons have died, and 3,828 persons have recovered worldwide. When this pandemic first began, China was the epicenter. The Kung flu, because it came from China. The Americans in particular, the American president disparaged the Chinese people. It was appalling. The attitude of a world leader. Today, the United States of America is in the lead by far to any other country, with 400,323,000 infections. And while they may not be leading in the number of deaths, China, where this coronavirus first reared its ugly head, only has recorded 81,740 infections, with 3,331 of those having perished, compared to the United States of America, which is third place for the number of deaths, but first place for the number of infections, 400,323 infections, 12,137 deaths, 1,906 persons infected today. That is, not infected, but died today in America. That's 1,417 people died today in America as a result of COVID-19. And we're told that one of our sons of the soil died as well with regard to the COVID-19 in the United States of America. Italy has had 17,127 deaths. Out of 135,586 infections, 17,000 persons have died. Spain, with regard to the number of deaths, is second place with 14,045, with the United States of America, as I said, in third place with 12,837, and China in seventh place, 3,331. Italy, Spain, the United States of America, France, the UK, and Iran have all surpassed China in the number of deaths. These countries were late in recording their first infection, but because they did not practice containment, look where they are today. I ask of you, St. Lucians, is this what we want? Is this what we are asking for? When the government has given us a reprieve and we choose to flock the supermarkets and stores en masse, not adhering to the protocols established, that of social distancing, that of proper hygiene, that of wearing a mask. And I know for some of us, myself included, we're a little wary of the mask, the whole mask situation, and we have our own concerns where the masks are concerned. But this is what we've been asked to do. Would it behoove us to wear masks? Hence, we are here today to talk about personal protective equipment and the proper way to use them. We will have Dr. Belmar on. I'm not sure if she's on. She's on the phone right now, I believe. Good evening, Dr. Belmar. Can we have Dr. Belmar on the phone? Okay, so I've been queuing Dr. Belmar is on the phone, but I don't hear her. I don't hear her. We expect to make a comeback economy-wise. It all hinges on those countries coming back on stream. And you can note the difference between the countries who kept their borders open, the countries who felt that they were mightier than any other, the countries which did not practice containment, but thought that they could ride it out. These are the countries that are being strongly hit right now. And again, the numbers speak for themselves, very appalling, with the United States of America with over 400,000 confirmed cases, Spain a distant second with 142,000 cases, with Italy right behind. And remember, Italy was really, for a minute there, we didn't think that Italy was going to stop. Italy at 136,000 cases, France at 109,000, and Germany 107, with China, which was the epicenter of this whole epidemic, this whole pandemic, at 81,740. So, Dr. Belmar is trying to get my attention. I'm not sure what's happening. You hear me on the phone. And so we're going to be trying to do that again. What's the status of Dr. Belmar? Okay, while we continue to try to get Dr. Belmar on the phone, we'll continue with some information here for you, because this show is all about what we need to focus on, not the partying, not the social events, not the griping, but the containment of this COVID-19, so that we do not experience one more confused case. The country has to go through a whole other set of protocols. It means perhaps that we may have to be locked down again for 24 hours. And even the Chinese people had to adapt. Even the rest of the world, all the countries who thought that the efforts of the Chinese government was draconian, they thought it was extreme and aggressive. They are now way ahead of where China was at this point in time. Remember, China first came out with this COVID-19, this novel coronavirus in December. We're now in April, and they have just recorded over 80,000. But countries like the United States of America, countries like Iran, countries like Spain, countries like Italy, France, and the UK, who were not doing nothing. They're really pretty much not doing anything, not closing down their borders, still conducting trade, not pulling back their citizens, while we were sending them back, while we were shutting down our borders. We can say we are lucky. We only have 170,000 people living here in St. Lucia. This is the number of persons who have been infected for some countries. For some countries, 100 and over 100. I mean, America alone has 3 times our population infected with this virus. So who are we not to want to have to follow what the Chinese did to protect ourselves? So what does containment mean? What is the difference between containment and mitigation? Containment, it means that in stage 1, there are no cases and there are only imported cases. Source control is aggressive, and we're trying to block the transmission. There's universal temperature monitoring and masking, as well as hand washing and extreme health education. This is containment. Source control, blocking of transmission, no borders, closing of our borders, quarantining our people, universal temperature monitoring, masking, hand washing, and extensive health education. Versus mitigation. Mitigation being the slowdown or increase in cases, flattening the curve. And we've talked about flattening the curve. I remember a couple of weeks ago we had Dr. Merle Clark on, and she was talking about flattening the curve, aggressive public education, testing, quarantine, and isolation, exhaustive finding and contact tracing, isolation, increased bed capacity now and in our isolation centers, cancellation of mass gathering, implementation of allocation of supply, and stable supply chain. And in the stage 3 now, we have established community spread. This is community spread. Reducing the cluster of disease throughout controlling epidemic, sustainable social and economic pastimes. I'm trying to read this thing, and it's a little, so bear with me. It's not that I cannot read. I can read. It's just a little difficult to read right now. But this is basically what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to contain and mitigate at the same time. We've been trying to tell you people to stay home, self-isolate, and if you cannot self-isolate, you will have no choice but to quarantine and to lock down the country, which is what we've done. Now, I'm getting some information here from Dr. Belmar, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to do 1,000,001 things at the same time. Dr. Belmar, we cannot get her on the phone, and she's extremely, extremely tired, so she's going to rest, and so you're left with me this evening. I'm so sorry about this. We cannot hear her on the phone. Whenever we try to reach her on the phone, we get some serious feedback, and so we cannot have Dr. Belmar on the phone with us this evening, although we really tried. I really sympathize with Dr. Belmar at this point, because it has got to be the most stressful thing. So she apologizes for not being able to be on first with us this evening, but we're going to have to make do with what we can. Our lines are open. Please feel free to give us a call. Tell us what your experiences have been today with the first day of lifting the the quarantine, the 24-hour lockdown, I know for my part, I saw lots and lots and lots of persons flocking to the stores today, not practicing social distancing. The police seemed overwhelmed and almost as if they had given up. It was a mess. The lines were extremely long, and sometimes I wonder, what is it that we cannot do without? What is it that we cannot do without in the stores that have us into the stores like that? It's really disturbing, it's really frightening, and it's frightening especially for persons like me who fall within the high-risk category. Some of you may know that I have already said in the past that I'm asthmatic, so I fall right within the high risk. Both of my parents are considered senior citizens, so we have to be very careful what we do, how we conduct ourselves, whether we follow the protocols established with regard to social distancing, whether we practice proper hygiene, whether we do everything that is asked of us, because we do know our parents are considered senior citizens and they have underlying conditions, likewise myself with my asthma. We have children, we have young persons, young children. They too are vulnerable, and we have to be careful that when we go out there, that we do not bring this virus home with us. What can we do? What can we do? What is the difference between self-isolating and quarantining ourselves? Why did we not practice self-isolation when we had the opportunity? You know, to my mind, self-isolation was the perfect opportunity to show how disciplined we were and to show that we could manage ourselves and not have this slavery mentality where we have massa, you know, the proverbial massa at our backs telling us what to do, slamming us all the time and telling us eventually, if you can't hear, you will have to feel, and lock us down, you know. If we can get the containment, or rather the self-isolation versus quarantine clip on, then we can show persons can understand while we wait for calls and while we wait for messages. Let's see how that works. The self-isolation versus quarantine clip, if you could put that up, please.
If you're told to self-isolate, that means staying at home, not going to work, school or other public places. You shouldn't have any visitors. If you develop symptoms of fever or cough, then seek advice first by phone. Don't just turn up at a medical centre or hospital. If you live with others, then you need to stay in a well-ventilated bedroom with the door shut. If you have to share a bathroom, then use it after everyone else. Don't share towels and toiletries. Your waste should be double bagged. If you test positive, it'll be separately disposed of. If you live on your own, you can order shopping online or get friends to help, but they should leave it on the doorstep. The coronavirus causes a mild illness for 4 out of 5 people. Self-isolating will help protect older people and those with underlying health problems from getting infected.
And that is what it is. So we've moved from self-isolation, we've moved from self-management, and now we are at the stage where we were quarantined. We have now moved from that stage and gone back into self-isolation, self-management. And we're making a special, I know I'm making a special appeal. I'm making a special appeal to the public. When you protect yourself, you protect me. When I protect myself, I protect you. Please adhere to the protocols that have been established for your protection, for our protection, for the protection of our families, our parents, our children. Okay? There's another clip that I want to show, and it's called Understanding Isolation versus Quarantine. If we can put that up, we can understand, we can get an idea of what it's not a video. It's not a video, but if we could put that up at some point, we can get an understanding of where we are. But this is just a temporary reprieve, people. We now have been hearing a lot about intermittent physical distancing, which means that even though we may come over the hump, even though we may go over the hump, we still have to observe certain protocols. We still have to observe social distance. Here we are, understanding the difference between isolation and quarantine. Isolation is for people who are sick. Quarantine for well people who may have been exposed to communicable diseases. So earlier I was making and I knew something was wrong, was off there. So I was making not misunderstanding, but using isolation for quarantine and quarantine for isolation. So isolation, where you are completely cut off, is where for persons who are ill, persons who are sick. So the 14 persons that we have recorded in St. Lucia who have the COVID-19, they're in isolation. Okay? And they are separate from people who are sick, separate from people who are not sick. So isolation separates people who are sick from those who are not sick. It restricts the movement of people with an infectious disease to stop the spread of the illness. And this is why we have to go into isolation. We have to contain this thing. So if we isolate those persons who are ill, if we isolate them, then we can contain the disease until they are better without further contaminating or infecting the rest of the population. Which is why we were asking, when persons come in from countries who have been noted to have a high incidence of COVID-19, when you come in, go into quarantine. Separate yourself from your loved ones to ensure that you continue to be with them. So isolate yourselves, go into quarantine, okay? And quarantine is for persons who may have been exposed to communicable diseases such as COVID-19. Right? So when you came in and we put you in quarantine for 14 days, that was the reason why. You may have been exposed as well as you may not have been exposed. And if you were exposed, you needed to protect not just yourself, but your loved ones and the rest of the populace. Quarantine applies to people who may or may not become sick. So we don't know. You have been exposed, you may not have been exposed. You may become sick, you may not become sick. So we're erring on the side of conservation and putting you in quarantine to ensure. And the reason for the 14 days is because this virus has a long incubation period. So while you may not be outwardly experiencing symptoms, while you may be asymptomatic, you could still be spreading the virus. Okay? Quarantine restricts the movement of healthy people who may develop the disease after possible exposure to an infectious agent, as opposed to isolation, which restricts the movement of people with the infection to stop the spread of the illness. Isolation allows, if we can move up a little bit, isolation allows for appropriate treatment in a hospital type setting. Okay, so persons who have exhibited the symptoms, who are coughing, who have the temperature, who have difficulty breathing, they are treated in an appropriate setting in a hospital or in a convalescent home. Whereas with quarantining, it requires people to stay in a designated location, for example, your home, or for a specified period of time. And the reason why we had those quarantine centers, because some people did not live alone. Some people could not be quarantined properly at their homes. They did not have a room where they could isolate themselves from the rest of the household. They did not have a bathroom that they could use. And as we saw in the clip, when you're in quarantine, you need to have your own bathroom. And if you're going to be sharing a bathroom, you need to observe you need to adhere to strict protocol. You have to use the bathroom last, and you have to wipe down every surface that you may or may not have come into contact with. You have to use bleach or disinfectant to make sure that you're killing off the virus. Okay? Isolation requires appropriate personal protective equipment, which is what we wanted to talk a little bit about today, the PPEs. How do we use PPEs, those masks and those gloves properly for those coming into contact with the person who is sick? So if you're dealing with a person who is ill, who has the virus, if you're treating that person, how do you wear that mask and those gloves and those other personal protective equipment properly? With quarantining, it requires active monitoring, including taking of temperature twice daily and checking for other symptoms. Isolation requires proper infection control, sterilization, and waste management. A lot of people don't realize that when this virus can live for us on certain surfaces, and there's a new study which has just come out that says that the virus can survive in your refrigerator for 28 days. So imagine you've gone to the store, you've braved all sorts of exposure. Persons have come into the supermarket before you, they touch things, you do not know who it is, who has the virus, who are just asymptomatic. You bring these vegetables, these canned goods, boxed items home, you put it in your cupboard, or you put it in your refrigerator, thinking, okay, you're safe because you've washed your hands and you wore your mask. But did you think of wiping down, sanitizing items which you brought home from the supermarket? So while you're not outside anymore or inside, but you now are quarantined with the virus in your home for possible contamination and infection later. And we're hearing now that 28 days in the refrigerator. So with isolation, it requires proper infection control, sterilization, and waste management. When you sneeze in that tissue, you've got to throw it away properly. Double bag your garbage when you're putting it out, because the sanitation people are going to come and take this, and you possibly can still infect them through your garbage. So we have to observe that. Whereas with quarantining, if you can go up a little bit for me. PPEs, now that was before. PPE was not required for contact with people who are not ill. But because we do not know who is ill, because the symptoms, 4 out of 5 persons only exhibit or experience mild symptoms, if any at all, it is now recommended that you wear masks when you're going out in public. And although I'm not sure if we can cue in the proper use of masks, but there is a poster that I want to show you with regard to mask effectiveness. If you can cue that in, mask effectiveness. And those masks may not be as effective as we think, but it is a requirement to help curb the spread of the virus. So if we're sneezing behind the mask and we're not spreading this virus, if we do have it. If we're speaking, some of us, we speak, especially those of us who have those famous gap tooth smiles. When we speak, sometimes we spray a little bit. Now, sometimes we don't see it, but it happens. So when you're speaking to somebody, even though you're observing social distancing, you may still be spreading the virus. And the reason why You wear the mask, it's not for yourself, but for those persons, the other persons, your neighbor, for everybody else. So if everybody treats everybody as if they have the virus, then we can potentially slow down the spread of the virus and flatten the curve, so to speak. Do we have that? Proper use of mask? Right. So we have the protection efficiency of masks. Now everybody wants to have an N95 mask. That ain't gonna happen. You're not gonna get the N95, and if you have surgical masks, thank God, because you're not gonna get those as well. As we know, even in the United States, the great and mighty bully has confiscated, I think it was 5 ventilators headed for Barbados, and they're now saying that no masks are going to be exported, no N95s and no surgical masks. They're leaving those for first responders and the frontliners. And if you can see, even the N95 only has a 95% protection limitation on viruses, but it is the most effective. Now, we're wearing those cloth masks, it's going to go up a little bit. We're wearing those cloth masks and activated carbon masks and sponge masks. And while that helps in curbing the spread, and I want to caution my words very much at this point because we've lost Dr. Belmar, who would be on to talk to us about it because of some glitches that we had in the system. We have to be cognizant of the fact that these masks are not the N95 and the surgical masks. The first 3 that was shown on the poster. N95, the surgical mask, and the FFP1 masks. These other masks do not provide that level of protection against the viruses, any virus, not just the COVID-19. So we have to be very, very careful that while we are wearing these masks out in public, not to fall into this false sense of security. And I noticed a lot of people did that. They were having the masks on. They were taking them and putting them on their heads. They were taking them and putting them on their chins. They had them covering their mouths but not their noses. All sorts of things. And sorry guys, I didn't do my manicure, so if you're looking at this and laughing at me, I'm so sorry. I'm so not a girl when it comes to these things. I didn't get to spruce up my manicure. But let's go back to the slide we were showing. These masks are just one in the arsenal to curb the spread of the disease. What we need to be doing is staying off the streets as much as possible, staying away from mass crowd events. And whilst we're not going to parties, because all parties and all fetes have been banned, but when we go to the supermarket and we go en masse, it becomes a mass crowd event. And so we're asking, though you are told to wear your mask, please practice social distancing. Most of the stores would have had demarcated outside and inside the stores. And most of the stores, if not all of the stores, have limited the number of persons allowed inside the store. Outside of the stores have demarcation lines where you're supposed to be standing 6 feet away from each other. Please do not come with a gaggle of people and have them standing in the same line with you because you want to go shopping with them together. This is about self-preservation. We're asking you to please adhere to the protocols established. Stand at the 6-foot marker, 6 foot in front of you and 6 foot behind you. Please stand at those markers. Please do not rush to get into the store. Please have your list when you're going into the store. It may seem selfish, but when you are going into, especially in the villages and the communities, in the community stores, when you are going into the store, please focus on getting in and getting out. You have your list. It makes no sense. You have a list, and most of the stores are now timing persons coming into the store. So you are being timed. You are maybe given 10 or 15 minutes to grab your essentials. It makes no sense to come out to the store early and spend that time taking lists from or taking orders from people on the outside. You're spending more time inside the store in a limited space with other people, further exposing yourself. Allow everybody to wait their turn. Allow everybody to wait in line. Go in and out and head home. Non-essential workers are still asked to work from home or to stay away from the streets. Just because we have a 10-hour reprieve doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want, or a 14-hour reprieve doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want. It means exactly that. You're getting a reprieve, go into the store, 15 minutes in and get out and head home. It doesn't make sense. Because if we continue like that, especially in the communities, because remember, we are zoned, what happened in Castries today, and I don't have the clippings to show you, but what happened in Castries today will happen to you, where stores were shut down because customers, consumers could not adhere to the protocol and the social distancing and the proper hygiene and the this and the that and whatnot. Please, we're asking you, we're begging you literally, practice social distancing. That mask that you have on your face, and remember the poster we showed earlier, the bottom three, those masks are not as effective as the N95, the surgical mask, and the FFP1 mask. These are for the frontliners. So whatever cloth mask and sponge mask and makeshift mask that you have, they are not as effective. So you go in and you go out. Don't have it on your head, on your chin, on your chest, on your neck. Cover your nose and cover your mouth. I noticed something that was very disturbing as well. Persons had bandanas. And they had the bandanas and they had it like this. And on top of that, they had their glasses on, sunglasses or whatever. So they had the bandana. I don't know about you guys, but this is very scary to me. Very scary. I do not know who is a potential threat. I do not know who is just concerned about not getting infected. People, wear a mask that just covers your nose and your mouth. Because as the acting commissioner has said already, you still need to be recognizable. I've seen people wear things like Arabs, and they're not Muslims, going out in public covered from head all the way down. All you can see are their eyes, their eyebrows, everything, their forehead, everything covered. People, please, this is not what this is about. This is a very serious thing. This is a state of emergency. We're still under a state of emergency. This thing is not going to end tomorrow. So it's pointless us taking it for a papi show. Do the right thing. And tomorrow, I'm going to invite you to follow me on Facebook, on my Facebook page. If you put in Laura Japierre, you will find me. At the same time, 8:30, I will be having Dr. Glensford Joseph on with me, and he will be showing us what Dr. Belmar could not do for us today, and that is tell us the proper use of those masks, how to put them on. And a lot of people, they have it on their heads, they have it, and crazy because you're touching things, you're touching metal, you're touching other surfaces that this virus could have been on. Then you're touching the mask, you're putting it up, you're touching your face. Then you're putting the mask over your face. You're trapping the virus that you potentially have just put on your face. All sorts of nonsense. People, please take this virus very seriously. I went out for maybe not even 15 minutes to View Fort today to pay a bill for the store to ensure that people in my community could get credit on their phone so that they could stay in touch with their loved ones. And when I came back, no word of a lie, I was terrified. I felt my chest constricting simply because I was so scared when I saw people not practicing social distancing. I'm thinking, my goodness, if I were to contract this thing, you may as well start saying goodbye to me. Because even though my asthma is very mild, it is very scary when I have an asthma attack. And because of that, because I am in the high risk, I will do whatever is necessary, whatever is asked of me to protect not just myself, but to protect everybody else. Let us have a look at the importance of social distancing so we can understand what and why social distancing is the #1 arsenal, right up there with proper washing of our hands. Let's have a look at what it means to observe proper social distancing. Right, this is the one. So I put this up every show that I do, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on television, because it is so important. One person in 5 days could infect 3 people, who in turn can infect 406 people in 30 days. With 50% less exposure, which is what we had before, because right now we have more than 50% exposure, because the way we're flocking to the stores as if the world is coming to an end, it will come to an end, and it will become self-prophecy. That 1%, that one person in 5 days can infect one person, and that other person in 30 days infects 15 people. Okay? With 75% less exposure, which is what we had when we had this 24-hour lockdown, and that's what it was, because people were still walking the streets. You know, police still had to be chasing people. If you have that one person with 75% less exposure, in 5 days infects less than one person, may or may not infect a person, and in 30 days, these 2 people will now have infected just 3 people. This is how it's simple. Stay home. Stay home. The parties will recommence once we get over the hump. Stay home, people. One person infects one person who infects, 5 people, 3 people in 30 days. This is what it is. Let's do the right thing. Let us observe and practice, not just observe, but practice, put into practice the protocols established for us to come out on the other side of this thing whole. Those persons, and we're running out of time, and I wanted to talk about flattening the curve, but since we don't have the doctor on the line with us, we'll skip this one, but we'll go straight to those persons at risk, and I've been alluding to that all night long. Those persons who are at risk, people like myself, persons like my parents, persons who are hypertensive, persons who are diabetic, people with heart conditions, lung conditions, kidney conditions. Let's have a look at those persons, those at risk. And those persons who are at risk, the vulnerable, some of the vulnerable, as I said earlier, those people who are on blood thinners for whatever, you have a clotting issue, you're on blood thinners, you are at risk. Recently pregnant people, and I think we have not touched a lot on those. People who have recently been pregnant, they are vulnerable. People with high blood pressure, people with immune suppressed, people whose immunity is suppressed for autoimmunity, people with blood disorders, people with diabetes, asthmatic people, immunocompromised people, mast cell disorder, heart disease, people over 60, cancer patients, kidney patients. These people are at risk. The more you go out, and they don't live alone, some of these people. They live at homes with us. So when we cannot behave ourselves, and when we cannot do what is asked of us, these people, we're actually condemning them. We're sentencing them to death because we cannot keep our little tails home. People, please, we're asking you, practice social distancing. Stay home, wash your hands, do all the right things. If you have to go out, because we've gotten this reprieve, the 24-hour lockdown has been lifted, wear a mask. But even then, wear it properly. Wear it covering your nose and your mouth only. Let your chin, let your eyes, let your foreheads be seen. We do know that there are criminal elements amongst us. We're getting reports of people being hijacked and being robbed. Please do the right thing. Stay home if you're not out. If you cannot stay home and you have to go out, please limit your runs. Leave your children. And that's the other thing. Children, as much as possible, should not be out. If you have an older child, an older teenager, 18, 17, leave the little ones at home with them. Express to them the importance of being obedient and staying home. Don't go out with a trailer load of family members to do shopping. It doesn't make sense. The more people in your home who are out of your home, the more it's the possibility of exposure. Zoning. Now we are now under zoning, and trust me, if we cannot behave ourselves, we're going to have to be done, follow some of the measures that some of the other countries, like the Bahamas, are doing, where you only go out according to the first letter of your surname. So if your surname is A from A to F or A to D, then you're allowed to the supermarket, and the rest of you stay home. Please do not let us get to be like this, where we are like slaves. Like we have a master on our backs. This is the zone. We have a northern zone and a southern zone. And let me tell you, some people have been very creative. So now the northern zone is 758, area code 758, and the southern zone is now area code 759. Let me tell you something, 759 is whooping 758 in terms of the social distancing. Not everybody is practicing it, mind you. But what from the videos that I see from up north, from the northern zone, you guys could do a lot better. You guys could do a lot better. So from Canaries on the west to Choiseul, and from Poile in the east to Labrie constitutes the southern zone, and all of the communities in between. So the southern zone is Canaries, Soufriere, Choiseul, Labrie, Vieux-Fort, Micoud, Poilin, and all of the communities in between. Like for instance, in Labrie, that includes Bans-Lagoas, Choiseul, that includes Piaille, Saltibus, Jetrine. All of those communities are in the southern zone. Now, in the northern zone, it includes Gros-Islet, Babonneau, Castries North, Castries Central, Castries East, Castries Southeast, Castries South, Ancillary, and Dennery. So we're starting from Gros-Islet in the north, we're going down the west coast, Babonneau, Castries North, Castries Central, and Ancillary along the west coast, and along the east coast, we're looking at Castries East, Castries Southeast, Castries South, and Dennery. Okay, so please do not have to let the police, and the borders will be, feel a little bit like Korea here, like we have North and South Korea and some of those other countries where there are borders, you know, like which they share land mass, but they're not the same country. You know, like North America with 3 countries. We have the United States of America, we have Canada, and we have Mexico, all forming part of North America, but, you know, with borders demarcating the 3 countries that make up North America, right? So please, people, follow, observe the zoning. If you're not living in the north, please do not try to pass the border and go up to the north. There's nothing there for you anyway. There's nothing there for you. And I don't know what can happen now, because people like me, luckily I live now in Labrie, so I'm back in the south. But I lived in the city for about 20 years, but I never changed my address on my driver's license or on my ID card. So every election, I would have to come down to Labrie to vote because I never changed my address on any of my documentation. I wonder what would happen to people like me. Because if I was stopped anywhere and they asked me for my ID card or my driver's license, I would have to produce that, and it would show that I lived in Labrie. But really and truly, I lived in Castries, and I worked in Castries. So if the powers that be are listening, there are people who are like that. People who are living in the south but work in the north. People who live in the north but never change their address on the forms of ID. So they would be up north, but if you ask them for the ID, it would show that they're living in the south. So this is where we have to exercise our sound judgment as police officers and understand that there are people like that. And let me tell you, with this zoning, it really, really brought to bear, I'm tempted to say foolishness, because I'm just a creature of habit. I'm a Jalabawi, and I just never changed my address. But I lived in the city for 20 years. So if this zoning and this cutting off of people had happened back then, I would have been in a royal pickle. But in any case, it is what it is. We are appealing to the police and security forces to please be mindful that there are people who are living in one area, but the ID card may show that they're residing elsewhere. Okay, I'm not sure that people will be actually walking with a phone bill or water bill or electricity bill as a proof of address, but that's what we've been asked to do, to walk with a piece of a bill or something that is a proof of residence for us. So we need to do that. And this is all the time we have. As we exit, we're going to show the protocols, some of the protocols that have been established already for us so that we do the things that we're supposed to do. We call it protocols, that calls an arsenal of things that we need to do so that we protect ourselves, and not just ourselves, but each other as well. As the coronavirus spreads around the world at an ever-increasing rate, the Caribbean is especially vulnerable because we have limited resources compared to the more developed countries, and even they are the hardest hit with all of their resources. So as we leave, we will be flashing on the screen for you those protocols, and in addition to which, the Caribbean stats that are that show us what our status is in the Caribbean. And so far, so good. So far, so good. But at snap of fingers, it could all change. So please be aware that we are where we need to be. Please follow social distancing measures to minimize the infections. Okay, this will slow down the spread of this COVID-19 and keep everyone safer and keep resources available for those most in need of it. We don't have very many respirators. When people like myself fall ill and we have to go in and be nebulized, or we have to be put on a respirator, you who are healthy could ride this thing out. You being on one puts us more at risk. Okay? Stay away from mass gatherings as much as possible. Remember, yesterday was only the first day to go shopping. There is still tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday being a public holiday, we are asked to stay home. We will be back under quarantine. But on Saturday, we get another reprieve. We have 2 days of quarantine thereafter, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Please do shop for what your essentials, not just anything that wishy-washy just because we miss having those things. Gatherings, it's even dangerous to die right now because you cannot be buried. Your family cannot give you a fitting burial. Those persons who wanted to get married this year have to put that on pause because they want to share those moments with their loved ones, and they cannot because only 10 people can be at your wedding. Keep a distance of 6 feet or 2 meters. As I said earlier, many of the stores, especially in the communities, are demarcated. Please follow those. When having a conversation, please limit how close you get to the person or persons whom you are engaging. Let's practice social distancing. Avoid touching other people because we contaminated. We just don't know it. I was speaking to my partner yesterday, and I was saying it's a cultural thing, you know. We cannot talk without touching people. And the new thing now is hugs. I love it. I love hugs. But we have to limit the hugs. Please avoid handshakes, hugs, kisses, and other forms of greetings. Maybe we might need to have to bump feet instead of hands, you know, which require us to touch other people. This is for your own safety and that of those around you. Please ensure that you avoid touching people. I know it's a cultural thing, but we have to do otherwise. Maintain social distancing. As I said earlier, the objective of social distancing is to reduce the probability of contact between persons carrying an infection and others who are not infected, so as to minimize disease transmission. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of Creole. I didn't do that because in the beginning of the shoot it was a little hectic for me trying to keep all of the moving parts together. But in subsequent shows, we will be doing a little bit of the Creole. Nous avons tout le monde, sous pani pour dehors, western dedans, pas toucher yon a l'autre, pas bro yon a l'autre, western dedans, si vous n'y pour sortir dehors, si vous n'y pour aller à supermarché, souffler camado, western 6 pieds, devant yon a l'autre, ou bien derrière yon a l'autre, pas fait ça, yon dou pas fait. C'est pas l'air pour aller driver, rester tranquille. Weste la kayo, lani moun la kayo ki malade, ki ni asthma, ki vie, ki ni hypertension, yo ni high blood pressure, yo ni sick, nou ka mado protekte se moun sa, weste la kayo. Pi ou ale do ek viwe la kayo, pi ou mette se moun sa la at risk. Suple nou ka mado. Now we will ask for to queue in the Caribbean stats as we go out, so you can see where we are. As we know in St. Lucia, we have 14 confirmed cases. 2 of these people have left because they were non-resident. They were imported to they've gone to their homes. We have 1 person, I think it's the 3rd or the 4th person to be infected who has fully recovered. And let me tell you something, when this thing takes 14 days to incubate and for us to show symptoms, it takes just as long for us to get rid of it. It's a superbug, okay? So it takes just as long for us to get rid of it. And this is the reason why only 1 person has been recorded as fully recovered. But we have 14 confirmed cases in St. Lucia, or we recorded 14 cases, and 2 persons have gone home, so that brings us down to a total of 12, 1 having recovered. Dominican Republic, I think, has the most cases of this virus, COVID-19 virus, with 1,828 confirmed and 86 deaths. I think this is the most that we've seen. Cuba having 350 confirmed cases and 9 deaths. Puerto Rico, 513, 21 deaths. French Guiana, 68, no deaths. Barbados, 60 confirmed cases and 1 death. Martinique, 135 cases, 4 deaths. Guadeloupe, 135 cases, 7 deaths. And Trinidad and Tobago, 105 cases, 8 deaths. Jamaica has 58 cases with 3 deaths. Virgin Islands, 42 with 1 death. The Bahamas, 29 cases with 5 deaths. Guyana, 29 cases with Bermuda, 37 cases, no deaths. St. Martin, Dutch, 32 with 6 deaths, and St. Martin, 32 with 2 deaths. Antigua and Barbuda, 15 cases. Dominica has 14 cases, no deaths. St. Lucia, 14, no deaths. Curacao, 13, no deaths. Grenada, 12, no deaths. Suriname, 10, no deaths. Belize, 7, 1 death. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 7. Montserrat, 7. Belize, 7. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 7. Montserrat, 6. St. Barthélemy, 6. Turks and Caicos, 5 with 1 death. St. Kitts, I can't remember. I can't see how many, but they have no deaths. No deaths for St. Kitts. And at this time, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to be? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to be? Do we want to be those persons during this COVID-19 era who hoard food and toilet paper and medicines that they don't need, complain all the time, increasing the transmission of this, increasing fear by transmitting our anger and emotion? Or do we want to be in the category of those who have taken the decision to stop consuming things that harm them, from food to news? The more macabre some of us, the more macabre, the more morbid the news, the more we entertain it. Do we want to be in that second subset of people who want to stop that? It's Lent after all, and we're stopping. Do we want to be the type of persons to let go of the things that we cannot control and do the things that we can control? We can identify with our emotions and make ourselves aware of the situation and think about the best way to act. how to protect not just ourselves but our neighbors, and to verify information before we share it, acknowledging that everyone is trying their best, even though it may not seem so, but we're trying our best? Or do you want to be in the larger subset, where you have a purpose and how you think of how you can help others? So it's not just me, it's not just you, it's not just me-centric. How to use your skills to service the ones in need, how to show empathy to others. This is what we call the growth zone. How to live in the present and focus on the future. How to keep ourselves emotionally happy and transmit hope rather than fear. How to show gratitude. How to find ways to adapt to changes. Because let me tell you something, after this COVID-19 era, we cannot go back to the way things were. There's no going back. We only can go forward. How to find ways to adapt to changes and practice calmness, patience, in our relationships, and creativity in our relationships and with the people that we come across, whether it's at work, at home, or at play. People, let's be self-aware. Let us be sensitive to the needs of those who are most vulnerable amongst us, and let us do all the things that we are asked to do without the belly aching, and putting public health, putting our fellow men ahead of the politics of everything. At this point, this is where we say good night. Take care of yourselves and each other. And again, please follow me tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. on my WhatsApp page. Just put in Laura Japierre and that will come up. And we will be joined by Dr. Gransford Joseph, who will be talking to us about PPEs and the proper use of masks, and why the proper use of masks or the improper use of masks are more detrimental to us than not wearing a mask at all. Until next time, adieu.